Hey, it's Andy here, and today it's all about snare wires and how different snare wires can change your snare sound. As I've often said in the past, the snare drum is the most sound-defining drum within your drum kit. If you have a good snare sound, you probably have a good overall drum sound. Now, we often talk about snare drum tuning, different drum heads and so on, or different snare drums. But one thing that isn't talked about a lot are snare wires. And today we're going to look at how different snare wires will change your snare sound and how to choose the right snare wires for your sound. The guys at Evans were kind enough to provide us with a whole bunch of different snare wires, and we're going to have a look at 9 different models in just a second. Now, before we get into all the different models, let's first have a quick talk about how to install the snare wires, how to properly place them, and how to adjust the sensitivity. First up, make sure the snare wires are in center, and this is sometimes a little tricky because they might look in center and then once you turn the snares on, they'll shift to one side. Make sure to take the time, adjust them properly, because only if they are really centered, they'll have the best possible response. Now, if you have them centered, what I like to do is, even with the snares turned on, make them as loose as possible so you don't hear them, and then by tapping in the center and bringing the snare wires in at the same time, you can adjust how tight you want the snare wires to be and just bring them up until a point where you think the snare wires are precise enough but still have a little body to them. Now that's kind of a region where I'd like it, but let me just quickly give you an example of what very loose snare wires and very tight snare wires would sound like in a direct comparison. You can really tell that the snare wires change the length of your snare sound. And usually we think of the tone as the defining element for the length of your snare sound, but the snare wires really have a share in this whole equation. Most snare drums come with 20 or 24 strand snare wires pre-installed. And to give an example of what the number of strands changes, we have 4 different models that we're going to compare. All of them are pure sound custom snare wires, so the wires, the plates, the straps are all the same. One has 16 strands, one has 20 strands, one has 24 strands, and then we have a pretty wide one, the Super 30, that has 30 strands. To give you the best possible comparison option, we chose a Sonor snare drum with the dual glide throw-off, because this one gives us the chance to just remove the snare wires with the butt plates still attached. And since we have multiple snare drums with this throw-off, we can just prepare the different snare wires with butt plates, and we don't have to remove any drum heads, we don't have to remove anything else but the butt plates with the pre-installed snare wires. Snare is tuned with a tune bot to 325 on top and 375 on the bottom. And now let's just take a listen to what those 4 snare wires sound compared to each other. Now next up we're going to compare 2 different materials, brass and steel. Both of them are custom Pro snare wires and they have the cool quick release mount that I really like. Now both of those are 24 strand snare wires and here's what they sound like compared to each other. Now, besides just the width of the snare wires and the material, there's some more things you could change to kind of manipulate the way your snare drum sounds. And right here I have 3 more snare wire options that change something else. First up is one of the Concert series snare wires of Pure Sound. This one has only 12 strands and it has a wider coiling pattern. So those are not as tight as with the others, and that will also change the sound. And it says they're more precise. Second one I want to show you is an equalizer. What they did here is just space them apart. It's still a 16-strand snare wire, but since there's nothing in the center, they say it reduces the sympathetic snare buzz. Also a thing that could be pretty cool. Let's find out in a second as well. And the third one is what they call twisted. And this one has like 2 coils per strand, and I'd expect it to be to sound a little tighter, more precise, shorter, which could be cool for heavy playing where you don't want the snares to buzz forever but be short and precise. But let's find out if my suggestion is right or if this one will prove us otherwise. Now let's hear those 3 in a direct comparison. Now, as you see, there's a lot to choose from and a lot of different snare wire options you could put onto your snare drum. Which one was your favorite? Which one would you love to try? And which ones do you use yourself? Do you just keep the stock ones or did you upgrade at some point? Let us know in the comments. I hope you learned something, enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.